This is KCBD News Channel 11 at 10.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Karen is off tonight. Lubbock parents and members of the local NAACP say they will not simply go away when it comes to claims of racism within the Lubbock-Cooper School District. They expressed their concerns at tonight's school board meeting. KCBD News Channel 11's Brittany Michelson was there and tells us why the families are taking the complaints against the district to the next level.
So until you guys decide to do something, I'm going to keep coming for you. This isn't going to stop, because as long as children have to go to school and deal with it.
Lubbock-Cooper parents and community activists say the district has not done anything to address claims of racism or promote change since April. That was when parents came out with complaints about Laura Bush Middle School students saying racial slurs and race-motivated bullying on social media.
A teacher said to a kid, "It's just a word, ignore them." That is not the truth. People like me hung because of the word, right? So it's not just a word, and it's a hate crime. And the teacher, the administrator, whoever is in charge of that class needs to stop it.
After the concerns came out, the district released a statement that it denies racist rhetoric has been permitted or swept under the rug. It also states the district had scheduled professional development trainings for staff and was researching speakers to address the student body. Phyllis Gant with the Lubbock chapter of the NAACP says none of that has happened.
We spoke to them last April, and not one time has the complaints been put on the agenda to at least be addressed. So how can you tell us you're working to fix it, you're working to change it, when you won't even acknowledge it?
Tracy Kemp expressed frustration with the district's response to a social media account containing photos of black students, including one of her own, that compared them to monkeys.
Nobody has said, "Ms. Kemp, we are sorry that this happened. This was beyond our control. This is what we're going to do to make it better."
A 6th grader who was at Laura Bush last year stood before the board.
My teacher was health teacher. He told me that my mom and my parents didn't raise me right. The kids said the N-word a lot of times, and I told the principal, but they didn't get in trouble.
The Lubbock NAACP filed a complaint with the Department of Education Office for Civil Rights.
I hope moving forward that we can come to the table and talk, because that's the most important thing. Hearing our side, hearing our perception, hearing from the students, so that they can go back and work together to put in preventative measures to help. It's not going to stop it, but mitigate it.
The school board did not address the concerns, as it stated it can't if the item is not on the agenda. Brittany Michelson, KCBD News Channel 11.